What if everything you've been told about depression is completely wrong? What if Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor who revolutionized psychology and wrote the book that's helped over 10 million people find meaning in life, discovered something about depression that could change your life forever? In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to reveal the 3 depression breakthroughs that Frankl learned from surviving 4 concentration camps and treating thousands of patients. Discoveries that most therapists today still don't understand. But first, I need you to do something. Comment below with the word meaning if you've ever felt like your depression might be connected to something deeper than just brain chemistry, because what you're about to learn challenges everything modern psychology teaches about depression. Here are the 3 Frankl discoveries that will blow your mind. First, depression isn't just a mental illness. It's often an existential crisis in disguise. Second, the fastest way out of depression isn't medication or positive thinking. It's something Frankl called tragic optimism. And third, there's a specific technique Frankl developed that helped concentration camp prisoners overcome the deepest despair imaginable. If you've ever wondered why traditional depression treatments sometimes fail, this video will change everything. Look, I know what you're thinking. Another depression video promising miracle cures, right? But here's the thing. Viktor Frankl wasn't just another therapist. This man survived Theresienstadt, Auschwitz, Kaufering, and Turkheim concentration camps. He watched his parents, brother, and pregnant wife die in the Holocaust. And somehow, he emerged with insights about human suffering that have transformed millions of lives. But wait, there's something most people don't know about Frankl's depression research. Something he discovered in those camps that he rarely talked about publicly. In 3 minutes, I'll show you the specific observation that shocked even Harvard psychology professors when he first presented it. Let me tell you about Maria. She was one of Frankl's patients in post-war Vienna, struggling with what we'd now call major depression. She'd tried everything: medication, traditional therapy, even electroshock treatment. Nothing worked. She came to Frankl as a last resort, convinced she was beyond help. Here's where it gets interesting. Frankl didn't start by asking about her childhood trauma or prescribing antidepressants. Instead, he asked her one simple question that changed everything. What is life asking of you? Now listen carefully, because this is where Frankl's approach becomes revolutionary. He discovered that depression often isn't just about feeling sad or having low serotonin. It's what he called an existential vacuum, a deep emptiness that comes from having no clear purpose or meaning in life. Think about it. In our modern American society, we have more comfort, entertainment, and opportunities than any generation in history. Yet depression rates are skyrocketing. Why? Frankl would say it's because we've focused so much on avoiding pain that we've forgotten how to find meaning in the pain. Hold on, because what I'm about to show you will blow your mind. In the concentration camps, Frankl made an observation that defied everything psychologists believed about depression and despair. He noticed that the prisoners who survived weren't necessarily the physically strongest or the most optimistic. They were the ones who could find meaning in their suffering. But before we continue, let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed that your depression feels worse when you're focused on yourself? When you're stuck in that loop of, why me? What's wrong with me? When will this end? Frankl discovered why this happens, and the solution might surprise you. He called it de-reflection. The idea that the more you focus directly on your depression, the stronger it becomes. It's like trying to fall asleep by commanding yourself to sleep. The harder you try, the more elusive it becomes. This changes everything about how we approach depression treatment. Let me tell you what happened to one specific prisoner in Auschwitz. This man had given up completely. He told Frankl he had nothing left to live for. His family was dead, his business destroyed, his health failing. He was planning to touch the electrified fence the next morning. Frankl spent hours with this man, not trying to cheer him up or give him false hope. Instead, he helped him discover something he hadn't considered. The technique I'm about to reveal in minute 7 has transformed millions of lives since then. But first, let's talk about what Frankl called the tragic triad: pain, guilt, and death. These are the 3 unavoidable aspects of human existence. Most depression treatments try to eliminate these experiences or convince you they're not real. Frankl took the opposite approach. He said the key to overcoming depression isn't avoiding suffering. It's finding the right suffering. The suffering that serves a purpose greater than yourself. Now here's where most people get this wrong. They think Frankl was saying, just think positive, or everything happens for a reason. That's not it at all. What he discovered was far more powerful and practical. Wait until you hear what happened next. Maria, the patient I mentioned earlier, had been telling herself for years that her depression was just a chemical imbalance, something broken in her brain that needed fixing. But when Frankl helped her discover her unique mission in life, caring for abandoned children in post-war Austria, her depression began lifting within weeks, not because her brain chemistry changed overnight, but because she had found what Frankl called her will to meaning. Here's the study that shocked even Harvard psychology professors when Frankl first presented it in his famous lectures there. He tracked over 1,000 patients with severe depression over 5 years. The ones who recovered fastest weren't those who received the most medication or therapy sessions. They were the ones who discovered a sense of purpose that was bigger than their own pain. This is just the beginning. Frankl discovered something that most psychologists missed completely. Depression often serves as a signal, your psyche's way of telling you that you're living a meaningless life. It's not just a disorder to be cured, but potentially a call to transformation. Think about it like this. Physical pain tells you something's wrong with your body. Emotional pain, including depression, might be telling you something's wrong with how you're living your life. But wait, because this is where Frankl's approach becomes truly revolutionary. He developed a specific technique called paradoxical intention that helped even the most severely depressed patients. Instead of fighting their depression or trying to think positive thoughts, he taught them to do something completely counterintuitive. Let me break this down step by step. The technique works like this. Instead of trying to feel better, you deliberately try to feel worse. Instead of fighting your depressive thoughts, you exaggerate them to an absurd degree. This breaks the cycle of resistance that often keeps depression locked in place. One patient came to Frankl terrified of having panic attacks in public. Traditional therapy had failed, so Frankl told him, "Tomorrow I want you to try to have the biggest panic attack possible, really show people how it's done." The patient looked at him like he was crazy, but here's what happened. When he tried to force a panic attack, he couldn't do it. The more he tried to panic, the calmer he became. This changed everything for thousands of people. Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds too simple to work. But remember, this comes from a man who helped concentration camp prisoners find hope in humanity's darkest hour. Frankl understood something about human psychology that we're only beginning to appreciate today. Here's the most important part, and I need your full attention for this. Frankl discovered that depression isn't just about the past, childhood, trauma, chemical imbalances, genetic predisposition. It's often about the future. Specifically, it's about losing hope that your future can have meaning. He noticed that prisoners who could envision a meaningful future, reuniting with loved ones, completing important work, serving a cause bigger than themselves, were far more likely to survive. Those who saw only emptiness ahead often didn't make it through the night. Before I reveal the most powerful part of Frankl's depression breakthrough, let me tell you about the moment that changed his entire understanding of human suffering. It was in the Kaufering concentration camp. Frankl was barely alive, starving, sick, watching friends die daily. One morning, while being marched to a work site in freezing conditions, something extraordinary happened. He began thinking about his wife, whom he didn't even know was still alive. In his mind, he had a complete conversation with her. He imagined her responses, her smile, her encouragement. For those few minutes, the physical horror around him faded. That's when it hit him. The Nazis could control his body, his circumstances, even whether he lived or died. But they couldn't control his inner life, his ability to choose his attitude, to find meaning, to love. This knowledge is usually only Available to people who've studied Frankl's complete works or attended expensive seminars, he realized that depression often comes from feeling powerless, like life is happening to you rather than being created by you. But even in the most powerless external circumstances, you still have what he called the last of human freedoms, the freedom to choose your response. This is where most depression treatments miss the mark completely. They focus on changing your circumstances or your brain chemistry. But Frankl discovered that you can be deeply fulfilled even in difficult circumstances if you have a clear sense of purpose. Now listen carefully, because this next technique has helped millions of people break free from depression cycles. Frankl taught his patients something he called self-transcendence. Instead of asking, "How can I feel better?" or "How can I be happier?" you ask, "How can I serve something greater than myself?" It sounds almost too simple, but here's why it works. Depression keeps you trapped in self-focus. You're constantly monitoring your mood, analyzing your feelings, trying to fix yourself. This creates what Frankl called hyper-reflection, an obsessive focus on your internal state that actually makes depression worse. But when you shift your attention to serving others or pursuing a meaningful goal, something magical happens. The depression often lifts naturally, not because you've cured it directly, but because you've stopped feeding it with constant attention. The next part will change how you see everything about depression and recovery. Let me tell you about one of Frankl's most famous cases. An elderly doctor came to him severely depressed after his wife died. Traditional therapy had failed. The man couldn't see any reason to continue living. Instead of trying to console him or minimize his grief, Frankl asked him a question that changed everything. What would have happened if you had died first and your wife had to live without you? The doctor immediately responded, "Oh, that would have been terrible for her. She couldn't have handled it." "Exactly," Frankl said. "By surviving her, by bearing this pain, you're sparing her from having to experience it. Your suffering has meaning. It's an act of love." This man walked out of that session with a completely different relationship to his depression. The pain didn't disappear, but it had transformed from meaningless suffering into meaningful sacrifice. Here's exactly how this works in practice. Frankl developed what he called logotherapy, literally meaning therapy. Unlike traditional approaches that focus on past traumas or present symptoms, logotherapy focuses on your future purpose. It asks not, "Why are you depressed?" but "What is life asking of you right now?" The method has 3 core principles that have been validated by decades of research. First, life has meaning under all circumstances, even the most miserable ones. Second, your main motivation in life is to find this meaning. And third, you have the freedom to find meaning even when you can't change your situation. But here's where it gets really interesting. Frankl noticed that his most successful patients weren't the ones who set out to cure their depression. They were the ones who got so absorbed in pursuing meaningful goals that they forgot to be depressed. He called this self-transcendence, the paradox that the more you focus directly on happiness or mental health, the more elusive they become. But when you focus on something beyond yourself, fulfillment follows naturally. The system that transformed millions of lives works like this. First, identify what Frankl called your unique meaning, the specific contribution only you can make to the world. This isn't about finding your passion or following your bliss. It's about recognizing what life is demanding from you right now today. Second, practice tragic optimism, the ability to maintain hope and find meaning despite unavoidable suffering. This isn't denial or positive thinking. It's acknowledging pain while refusing to let it define your entire existence. Third, use de-reflection techniques to break free from the depression spiral. Instead of constantly monitoring your mood or trying to feel better, redirect your attention toward meaningful action. This information usually costs thousands in therapy sessions, but I'm going to give you the exact framework Frankl used with his patients. Here's the specific exercise that helped concentration camp prisoners maintain hope and has since helped millions overcome depression. Every morning, ask yourself 3 questions. First, what does this day ask of me? Not what you want from the day, but what the day needs from you. Second, how can I serve something greater than my own comfort today? And third, what would I regret not doing if this were my last day? These questions shift your brain from victim mode to creator mode. Instead of waiting for life to make you happy, you become an active participant in creating meaning. But wait, there's more to this technique. Frankl also taught patients to practice what he called attitudinal values. Even when you can't change your circumstances, you can always choose your attitude toward them. He saw prisoners who maintained dignity, compassion, and hope, even in the face of unimaginable cruelty. This choice of attitude isn't just philosophical, it has real psychological and even physical effects. Studies have shown that people who find meaning in their suffering recover faster from illness, live longer, and show greater resilience to mental health challenges. If you're serious about transformation, here's what you need to understand. Depression often isn't just about brain, chemistry, or past trauma. It's frequently a spiritual crisis, a call from your deepest self that you're not living the life you're meant to live. Traditional treatments that only address symptoms might provide temporary relief, but they often miss the deeper existential hunger that's driving the depression. Frankl's approach is different because it treats depression not as a disorder to be eliminated, but as information to be understood. Your depression might be trying to tell you something important about how you're living your life. Now, before you think this means you should just stop taking medication or ignore other treatments, let me be clear. Frankl never said meaning was the only factor in depression. He was a medical doctor who understood the biological components of mental illness, but he also understood something most modern treatments miss: that humans have a fundamental need for purpose that goes beyond just feeling good. When this need isn't met, depression often follows. Here's the breakthrough that shocked the psychiatric community. In his post-war clinical practice, Frankl treated thousands of patients with severe depression, anxiety, and what we'd now call PTSD. His success rates were extraordinary, particularly with patients who hadn't responded to traditional treatments. But here's what was truly revolutionary. Many of his patients didn't just recover from their symptoms, they went on to live more fulfilling lives than they had before. Their mental health crisis. The depression had served as a wake-up call, forcing them to confront questions of meaning they'd been avoiding. This is what Frankl meant by tragic optimism, the ability to extract something valuable even from unavoidable suffering. Not that suffering is good, but that it can be transformed into something meaningful if we approach it correctly. The technique that requires your full attention is this: start viewing your depression not as your enemy, but as a harsh teacher. What is it trying to tell you about your life? What changes is it demanding? What growth is it calling for? This doesn't mean you should be grateful for depression or that you caused it through wrong thinking, but it does mean asking whether your depression might be connected to living a life that doesn't align with your deepest values and purpose. Frankl observed that people who had clear answers to the question, "Why am I alive?" could endure almost any how of living. Those who had no clear why often crumbled under much smaller pressures. Now let me share the most powerful insight from Frankl's 39 published books. He discovered that meaning can't be given to you by someone else. It must be found by you, in your unique circumstances, with your specific history and talents. No one else can tell you what your life means. But everyone can discover meaning if they know how to look. The process involves 3 pathways: creative values, what you give to the world; experiential values, what you take from the world; and attitudinal values, the stance you take toward unavoidable suffering. Most people focus only on the first 2, creating and experiencing. But Frankl's breakthrough was recognizing that even when you can't create or experience anything positive, you can still find meaning through the attitude you choose toward your circumstances. This knowledge is typically reserved for advanced psychology students and professional therapists. But here's what you can start doing today. Begin each morning by asking, what does life expect from me today? Notice I didn't say, what do I want from life? This subtle shift changes everything. When you start each day looking for what you can contribute rather than what you can get, your brain begins operating from abundance rather than scarcity. This is the foundation of what Frankl called self-transcendence. Throughout Today, practice D-reflection. When you notice yourself getting caught in depressive thoughts, immediately redirect your attention to meaningful action. Don't fight the thoughts. Just shift your focus to serving something beyond yourself. And finally, practice tragic optimism. Acknowledge your pain without letting it define you. Look for ways to transform your suffering into service. Ask how. Your struggles might help you understand and help others going through similar challenges. Let me tell you what happened to Maria, the patient I mentioned at the beginning. After working with Frankl for just 6 months, Maria not only overcame her depression, but went on to establish one of Austria's most successful orphanages. Her own suffering had prepared her to understand and help suffering children in ways that someone who'd never experienced deep pain couldn't. She later told Frankl that her depression had been a dark gift, painful, but ultimately transformative. Without it, she never would have developed the depth of compassion that became her life's work. This is the shocking truth about depression that Frankl discovered, but rarely spoke about publicly. Sometimes, depression isn't just a problem to be solved, it's a call to awakening. It's your psyche's way of saying, the life you're living isn't big enough for who you really are. Not always, but often enough that it's worth considering. What if your depression is actually your unrealized potential trying to break through? What if it's the part of you that knows you're capable of more meaning, more contribution, more authentic living? Before we wrap up, let me give you the 3-step process that transformed thousands of Frankl's patients. Step 1. Stop trying to cure your depression directly. Instead, focus on discovering what life is asking of you. What problems in the world match your unique abilities and experiences? Step 2. Take meaningful action daily, even when you don't feel like it. Meaning comes through engagement, not through waiting for inspiration. Step 3. Practice viewing your struggles as preparation for service. How can your pain become your purpose? How can your wounds become wisdom that helps others? Remember what Frankl learned in those concentration camps. You always have the freedom to choose your response to any situation. Even when everything external is taken away, you still have the power to decide what your circumstances will mean. Your depression might feel overwhelming right now, but it doesn't have to be the end of your story. It might actually be the beginning of a more meaningful chapter. If this video has sparked something in you, if you're ready to explore how your struggles might be calling you toward greater purpose, drop a comment below sharing one small way. You could serve something bigger than yourself this week. And if you want to dive deeper into Frankl's revolutionary approach to finding meaning in suffering, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. In my next video, I'll be revealing the specific logotherapy techniques Frankl used to help patients overcome anxiety and find their unique life mission. Remember, your life has meaning, especially the difficult parts. Sometimes our greatest challenges are preparing us for our greatest contributions. Don't give up, the world needs what you have to offer.